It's Zach Eady with Purdue Men's Basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Craig Bowers, here on a Monday in August, getting closer to basketball being fully back, but we do have some practices starting to go on. They're finishing up summer workouts pretty quickly at this point. 84 days away from the start of the season, 85 days away from Purdue's first basketball game. Had the alumni game, open practice, and then we're also just going to plan on talking through kind of the big room. And I think if you were to divide Purdue into two sections of guards and bigs, the bigs is a lot more straightforward to me, but still things definitely to discuss with that. So Craig, throw it to you. How you doing? And I know you were able to be at the alumni game and all that. How was all of that?
Doing well. We're having to move over these next few weeks. Kind of been working on it for the last few weeks. So my daughter and I are moving, and that's why my decor looks a little bit different behind me, because literally every wall in this house currently is blank. So doing it out of a different room here, and I don't know if you've moved much, but man, that process is a pain. I've been here for 7 years, and it's just like I can't tell you how many boxes of stuff I've just thrown away or given away or whatever, man.
This summer was the first summer in 7 years I didn't move.
Wow.
Granted, it was a lot of college, right? It was take my stuff to college, move it to wherever I was living for the summer internship, back to college. So it was there was multiple times this summer I thought I was like, wow, I'm like grateful to not have to actually move this summer. It's no fun. So,
No,
but yeah, you've been busy with that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Getting ready to hit up Boiler House Prime as soon as this is over, so we can't go too long because I can't miss my reservation there, Joe. Don't know if you've heard about that restaurant, but excited to go try that out. As you mentioned, did get to go to the alumni game. Did get quite a few messages from people that watch the show because I was sitting kind of like front row in the audience, like normal seats. And I look down and I see Newbert and Carmen sitting down there on the scorer's table. And I just sent Foreman a text, the greatest SID in the world, by the way. Give Foreman his props all the time, every time. Everybody that comes in from other schools talks and just raves about him. But shot him a text and was like, hey, if there's an empty seat, you mind if I move down there too? And he said, come on, man. So moved down there to an empty seat. Got quite a few messages from viewers of the show when they watched the video because my seat just happened to be like the first one on the scorer's bench right next to Matt Painter. And I can tell you, Joe, getting to sit there and listening to him just kind of shoot crap back and forth with all of his former players was a lot of fun. He had some really lighthearted moments with all of them. With our guy, Bobby Riddell. Bobby drills a three. Painters takes him out like 10 seconds later. And Bobby's like, Coach, I was getting on a heater. Painter just kind of slaps him on the back and says, yeah, but you're killing us on D like always, Bobby. Whatnot, sent him to the bench. But I think the lower bowl was full. Now, was it packed in as tight as what it would be at an actual game? No, but that lower bowl was full, and the upper had some spillover in it. Was talking to Jason Bunger, who's head of ticketing, and said that lower bowl will sit like around 4,500 if everybody's packed in there tight and whatnot. And I think it just really is a testament to what this Purdue program has built. The fact that many people will come back to watch alumni play in a pickup game. Just absolutely amazing what the Purdue crowd was that day. When you put that in perspective, Liam Murphy at North Florida, I think their stadium holds like 4,800, I want to say. Maybe it's 5,500. I can't remember. And then, it was like 5,500, 5,800, something like that. And Oscar Kluff at South Dakota State, capacity is 5,000. So essentially, there was about as many people there to watch an alumni game as what those two play in front of when they have a packed house at the two schools that they came from. And you heard Kluff in the interviews that we posted after that the practice the next day talk about just how awesome it was to see that and how awesome it was to see all the alumni come back. And just it was that fact, right? That the family feel, the culture feel of Purdue that really attracted him to come in the first place. And that just kind of reaffirmed it. But the game itself was awesome because for somebody who graduated Purdue in 2000 and that baby Boiler team, 8 years later, was such a special team to my fandom as a Purdue basketball player. Getting to watch Juwan, who I don't think's been back to Purdue in a long, long time. Him and Robbie both like put up a 30-piece plus. And then, Robbie just goes on an absolute heater from three, throws down a dunk at the end of the game for good measure as well. Just to kind of put an exclamation point on it to win the game. But those two guys who were teammates and were both All-Americans at some point in their career, just going back and forth was just a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun.
Yeah, seemed very much like a good time. Can't say I'm shocked to hear that it was a good crowd for something like that. I did look it up. It was 5,800 for North Florida's capacity and 5,000 for South Dakota State. So you were right there. Cool spot for you to be able to listen and watch. I was in a golf tournament at that point, to be honest. That's where I was at that moment in time.
What'd you shoot?
I went 83, 82. So
okay.
It was my first tournament in 5 years because I was on the club team, so not D1 team by any means, but the club team at Purdue for a couple of years before kind of COVID hit and that. But it felt good. Felt good to be back out there and like actually compete. But that's where I was. You were at Alumni Day, and then the next day there was open practice. Also, you were able to go to. So, kind of what were your, it's practice, so there's only so much you can actually take away from practices. But kind of what were some of the things that stood out during that time? And I think you were able to talk to the players too a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think everybody was excited to see Kluff and to see Meyer. And unfortunately, they were resting Meyer. Nothing serious or anything like that. Just, talking to Foreman a little bit there before practice started. It sounded like he'd just been playing so many games over there doing FIBA U18. FIBA U19 and then FIBA U20, right? Or was it the other way around, 18 and 19? I don't remember.
FIBA U19, and then it was the Eurobasket U20.
Yeah. So doing those two for as many games as he played in a row with as few days as he had off. And then, pretty much immediately then flying over to the U.S. to come to start practice with Purdue. They just said they wanted to kind of manage him through that. So they were giving him a day off there. One thing that's interesting to me, Joe, is that summer workout period. They get an 8-week period and they get a certain amount of hours. I think it's 8 hours that they get through that time that they're allowed to have like coaches around the players to, do workouts with their players. There's no set time of once you hit like summer, they can do that in any 8-week stretch that they want to, or they can put those 8 weeks together any way that they want to. Mm-hmm. So it was done that Sunday when we watched the last practice or the practice on Sunday after the Alumni game. That was the last summer workout. But I also didn't realize until they mentioned it that it's like per player. So Meyer and Kluff right now, because they came over here later, are actually doing workouts with coaching staff still because they haven't hit their allotment of the amount of weeks and the amount of time. Now, the other players aren't there, right? So it's not like they're going to get a scrimmage or anything like that. But they're still doing some workout. I think you saw the Purdue basketball media team put something out that was showing Meyer practicing or working out a little bit yesterday or today as well. So that's interesting to me. But in terms of what jumped out at practice, obviously it was my first look at Kluff. And one, he is a large human being. Like, I mean, he's 6'11", and obviously we're used to seeing Zach Edey at 7'4", but the dude is built, right? He's just a sturdy dude at 6'11". He's not going to get moved around very much. First time getting to kind of see him, and a lot of things that we talked about right after he committed, I thought you saw really quickly in practice. He's got good footwork. He's got soft hands. He's really good around the rim. He's got more elevation than I thought. I put up a couple of clips, right after or during that practice of him getting up and dunking in some drills and then some scrimmage work and whatnot. And he's got a little bit more bounce to him than I guess I thought he did. But a really physical guy. Obviously, Painter kind of joked that he came in a little out of shape because when he went back to Australia, he didn't have anywhere to work out. All the facilities were being used because they were in season. So he just had to try to work out at home, and his cardio is not great right now. But even with that, as Painter said, and as you kind of saw in practice for those of us that were there, he just eats up rebounds, man. Like, it doesn't matter where it is. That dude's going to find a way to get a rebound. Extremely physical, good passer for his size. Saw several good passes. And I know we joke about the 75% 3 rate, but like his shot was money. There was a stretch in there where I looked over at our good friend Casey Bartley, and I was like, man, I've not seen Kluff miss a 3 yet. Right after that, he finally missed one. But there was a long stretch there where they were running through drills and whatnot, not just shooting threes, but running in transition, catching and shooting, where he just didn't miss one. So it'll be interesting. We'll talk later about how we see the big room being used when all that personnel is on there together. But it's going to be interesting to see exactly how they decide to use Kluff. Outside of that, I mean, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, TKR, they were what they were, right? They still look like studs. I know sometimes some of the outside media people get on us that are out there because we're talking more about the new guys. But that's what's new to us, right? Like Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, TKR still looked extremely great. I actually think Braden's got a little bit more athletic. A couple times he kind of went once a drill was done, went up and dunked it. I think he's got a little bit more bounce to him. I don't know if you saw, he just posted that video, Joe, on Twitter today. Might have been on Instagram, and then he shared it on Twitter where he's doing like the standing jump or whatever in the gym and whatnot, kind of showing off his hops.
I did not see it, no.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're going to see Braden play above the rim a lot, but I kind of like when people talk about Purdue not being athletic, like Braden is an athletic dude. He's just 6 foot, right? He's not Muggsy Bogues in terms of his elevation or anything like that or his hops, but like he's an athletic dude for his size in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, athleticism can mean so many different things. I do think Purdue is, I'm not fully gone through every single Big Ten roster, but Purdue will be one of the least athletic teams in the Big Ten, maybe the least athletic. Now, they'll also be the most skilled and arguably the best, but Braden, it's just different with Braden because, like, even as I've watched through some of the, like, there's other guards that are similar size in that. It's just like nobody has at his size has his combo of like quickness with control, with change of pace, with just kind of like he has like a strong base, and I think that's what kind of lets him do his thing. Yeah.
Outside of that, Fletch was really vocal as a leader in practice. I think he's really kind of solidified that role as the vocal leader. TKR, it was nice just in terms of new things, seeing him kind of flip up passes in drills or in scrimmage to, Jacobson or to Kluff, either one. See that passing continue to grow in his game. Benner, I guess, is the other one that kind of stood out to me. And it wasn't like he drilled a bunch of shots in scrimmage or anything, but it just really jumped out how much LT does well. He's good off the bounce in terms of his handle. He's a good passer. And he's more physical than I expected him to be. He's obviously leaned up, toned up with a year, hitting the weight room. But him and TKR got in a scrap once and were fighting for the ball down low. TKR eventually wins it. There was a moment where Benner looked like he might have actually gotten hurt off of it, but he wasn't giving up, right? Like, I mean, he was getting in there and getting dirty with it. He was a really good rebounder in high school. That surprised me a little bit. Jakari and CJ just look that much more confident, that much more flow in the offense and defense, what their roles are, all of those sort of things. They're both still very keenly aware, talking to them kind of like in the post-game interviews that, we're going to be the 4th or 5th option. It's going to flow through Fletcher. It's going to flow through TKR. It's going to flow through Braden. I don't think you're going to see huge scoring jumps or anything like that. They just look better at what they're supposed to do right now. Last thing I'll say, Joe, about practice, and then we can move on to the bigs. The defense looks better already to me, just with Kluff back there, with Jacobson back there protecting the rim. There's a stretch there where they kind of run these drills just where they start the offense out top. They'll talk to him for a little bit, and then they go up against the defense, and they'll flip back and forth 5-on-5. There was a stretch of about 10, 12 minutes where nobody scored. And like you think about the offensive weapons that are on both, even if they're split, right? You think about the offensive weapons on both sides. There was some encouraging signs defensively, I should say, that look like they're going to be significantly better than last year.
And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but they got to be. the offense is going to be elite, but the defense is probably going to be what decides if they're cutting down nets or not this season. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess this is also my first time hearing Kraig talk about all this stuff too, so it was good to get the intel right there. We'll kind of segue now to the bigs. We'll do probably. I assume we're going to do a guard one of these as well, where we kind of talk through all the guard room. Purdue doesn't really have a wing room this year, just with how they're designed. I mean, Benner is basically the only wing, and you can maybe throw Lawyer in there, I guess. But we'll probably talk through the guards in the next one. But let's talk about the bigs. And so for who we're going to be talking about, obviously, I think the big three is going to be TKR, Oscar Kluff, and Daniel Jacobson. Those are the three bigs going to be getting a ton of minutes. Raleigh Burgess, obviously, is he is another true big. He has been hurt a little bit, so we'll kind of see what we get from him this year. And then Liam Murphy and Jack Benner both slot in as backup fours at some point. Benner is somebody that can play the 3 or the 4. I can't imagine a lineup with Murphy at the 3. Maybe it happens. I can't imagine that at all. But for the sake of just kind of this discussion, those are the 6 we'll be keeping in mind, obviously, with the main focus being TKR, Kluff, Jacobson, and then kind of, I think, in my mind at least, it's who kind of gets those other 10 minutes at the 4 spot. So kind of go through that here. I'm going to just kind of toss it to you, Kraig, where you want to specifically go, and I'll just kind of follow.
Yeah, right. So obviously, I think when we talk the bigs, we got to start off with TKR. He's the returner. He's the one that increased in production in significant ways last year. If we look at him, obviously 6'9", 240-pound redshirt senior. Last year that we're going to see TKR in a Purdue uniform. First team All Big Ten last year. Honorable mention AP All-American. Third team CBS All-American. Only player in the country, Joe, to average 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. And only the third player in Big Ten history to do all of that, shooting 59% from the field. He is now up to 10th most. He had the 10th most season points in Purdue history last year with 723 and led the country and made field goals. I can very specifically, Joe, remember you and I doing a guest appearance on Sleepers last year, where they ranked the top 50 players in the Big Ten. If I remember right, was TKR like 21st on that list?
He was right in that. There was like 7 bigs in a row, I remember. I forget the specific numbers, but it's right, 18 to 25, somewhere in there.
And a lot of the discussion was, everybody around Purdue kept saying TKR was going to make this jump as soon as Zach left. But there was a lot of speculation about whether he could do it. Once the lights were big and on him and Zach was gone, and he did, right? The year before, he averages 6.4 points per game. This past year, he averages 20.1 points per game. So I guess from your standpoint, Joe, as we look at TKR coming into his last season after making this big jump last year, what do you expect out of TKR? What are the kind of goals he could potentially reach or areas where he could still continue to get better? And what is he bringing to Purdue this year?
Yeah, well, first of all, my mic just switched. I apologize if my audio was poor for the first 18 minutes of this. Did not realize that it switched on me somehow. Should be back, and we should be all good now. Hopefully a little bit clearer. Hopefully the other mic wasn't terrible. So my apologies for that. It's preseason, it's off season for us too. But TK, I mean, realistically looking at what he can do and improve on, offensively, the passing is really the only thing where, right, some of the decision making I think at times it's not even like he was terrible at it. He was 16.8 assists, 13.9 turnover ratio, turnover rate. Those are both solid numbers for somebody in his role. You maybe want to see this assist bump up just a touch this year. I don't expect him to expand to 3. I don't think he's kind of in the Zach Edey dilemma where it's maybe he could, but does that really benefit Purdue to be able to? I'm looking through some of his numbers. He shot 53% on floaters, 51% on hook shots, 69% at the rim. Those are some wild numbers to have, especially from, what is he, 6'9", kind of forward. So in terms of all that, just kind of keeping him, maybe there'll be little nuances with the timing of Braden, TKR, and pick and roll, and kind of how he's hitting it in the short roll gaps. But offensively, the passing is going to be the bigger thing. Just where, right? How now? All due respect to Caleb first, like teams are going to now have to respect the 5-man offensively. How is he able to capitalize on that? Is right? Can he make other bigs be punished a little bit just by pilo passing, things like that? And then he just has to be good defensively, because that's, I think, one of the probably least talked about things with Purdue this offseason is like, right, for whatever Caleb First was, he was so important for Purdue defensively last year. And a big reason was all those odd matchups. Caleb First was the one that guarded them. Ace Bailey, hey, Caleb First, you go take him. Brooks Barnheiser, I think Caleb First was on him. Or no, he was hurt. So, but like whoever they had at I guess Martin, I don't know if you remember if he's on Martinelli or not at this point. But regardless, you get the point. Like some of these like jumbo forward wings that play the 4, like First was on him and TKR guarded 5s. That's not going to happen this year. If we see some spot minutes at TKR at the 5, sure, but that's going to be a handful at most. Like TKR has to go guard 4s. And now he did it with Zach Edey. Zach Edey is a better defender, in my opinion, than Kluff or Jacobson, especially senior year Zach Edey. So, like, that's going to be the big thing to me. Like, TKR offensively, he's going to be one of the top 5 probably offensive players in the country pretty easily, in my opinion. It's defensively, can he hold up enough against and can produce scheme well enough to, like, hey, some of these, the team that pops off in my head immediately is Michigan, right? They're going to play a true big of like Merez Johnson or Ademara, who both Big Ten players already. And then they're going to have Yaxel Lendenborg, who's kind of this do-it-all, power forward, preseason All-American type dude. Like, how can TKR hold up enough against players? I mean, against him is a really high caliber, so maybe not the best example, but that type of thing. That'll be the big thing for me on kind of what I can hope to see from him this year. It's just being good enough within the system that it's fine.
Yeah, and I think that's, my largest concern about this team as a whole. I've heard some other people mention different things. For me, it's just how do we, when we do play a team that has that Dawson Garcia type of 4 or Ace Bailey type of 4, what do we do? Exactly. And does Painter draw up some specific scheme that night so that nobody's ever really guarding him alone on an island, or how do we handle it? Because like you said, right now it's TKR. We'll talk about Murphy and Benner here in a couple of minutes, but I don't know that either of those are really adept to be able to handle that at a really high level either. So that's the big question mark to me. Now, there's only so many Ace Baileys and Dawson Garcias out there in NCAA basketball. A lot of teams just don't have that really good big combo type of 4 that can hurt you off the dribble and can also get physical. So I think it's one of those things that it could provide for a difficult matchup for Purdue, certainly when we do see it. Let's roll into Oscar Kluff then. As we talk about him, I know we kind of did a really quick show after he committed. People could tell we were really excited about it. I got a lot of comments of like, man, that's the most excited I've seen you guys in terms of talking about somebody that was new coming to Purdue. 6'11", 255-pound senior. Played at Washington State for a year, really blossomed at South Dakota State, played a couple of years in junior college from Australia, was first team All Summit League last year and was also on the All Defensive team. Averaged last year 17.6 points, 12.3 rebounds a game. We know what he does rebounding wise. Number 1 defensive rebound percentage in the country, number 5 offensive rebound percentage in the country. And that's what he was brought here to do, in my mind. Purdue's number 1 issue to me, more so than anything else last year, was rebounding. And multiple times down the stretch in that Houston game, you just said, man, if we could have just kept them from getting that second chance opportunity, Purdue's going to the Elite 8 in this game. Feel like he's brought here to fix it, but talk to us a little bit more, Joe, about Oscar Kluff, what he does well, where he likes to operate from scoring-wise, and what he's going to bring to Purdue.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on it with rebounding. Like that is going to be priority number 1 for him. He's going to be in a system now where he's the 4th or 5th option on the floor most of the time. Maybe there's some sub patterns where he's like the 3rd option. So like offensively, he's still going to be able to do stuff, and he still has some skills to be able to work with TKR and some of the other bigs. But at the end of the day, rebound, protect the rim, those are priority 1 and 2. And as you mentioned kind of off the top when you were talking through the open practice that you saw, like he's just a big dude, broad shoulders, like just a very strong body, just really throughout his entire body. Consistently boxes out was something I kind of saw in film. Like he is consistently hitting guys. And he also times rebounds well because he is not explosive. Like he is not an explosive player. As you just see a dunk right there. But like in terms of in-game, like I watched when I watched some of the film, he went up against Kliff Amori, right? Who was at Bama last year. Granted, Kliff Amori's one of the most athletic bigs and one of the best rim protectors in the country. But there was times where he struggled a little bit with that length and with that athleticism. That's not necessarily his strength, but he makes up for it with all the other things of being in the right spot, working hard, hitting dudes, and just has a pretty good feel, I think, for the game. Like offensively, he'll probably be in the dunker spot a lot, which is kind of that short corner baseline. I would expect him to operate there. He might operate a little bit at the top of the key, regardless of whether he's able to shoot or not. But yeah, those are kind of where I see him. And then he'll get some post ups too, right? He's good. He's good operating on the block. He has pretty good touch on his hook shots, can more or less go over either shoulder. He's more of an under the rim finisher. So he just kind of has to be a little bit crafty with some of his angles, and being able to do that. But he's also, I think the other thing is like that makes him fit pretty well. 2 things. One, I think he's a positive passer. He's not gonna, he's not Jokic or anything like that, but he is a positive passer. He's also a really good screener. Like he is good with understanding his angles for screening. He hits dudes consistently. And he's, I think, kind of like TKR in that he's almost a little bit more of a short roll operator, right? I don't think Kluff's like a major lob threat at all. He could, he'll get a few, I assume, but he's more of also this short roll, kind of trails on the rolls, catch at 8 feet, let me dribble, put my shoulder into you, and see if you can absorb the contact. So that's kind of how I envision him, especially when he's on the floor with TKR. He's off, when TKR's off, that's when we might see a little bit more pure post ups for Kluff. But he does all the little things right, and Purdue desperately needs that from the big spot.
Right. And not necessarily a guy that's going to block a lot of shots, right? But just with his physicality, he's going to make shots more difficult, make it harder for guys to get really good post position down low. And then he just positions and reads the ball coming off so well to me as a rebounder. That's one of the things that I was impressed with. I thought that's one of the things that made Dennis Rodman great as a rebounder, is just his ability to read how that ball is going to come off the rim and react to it and get to it. As you said, pretty good passer for his size, 22% assist rate last year at South Dakota State. So I'm really excited to see what he does. I know we joke about that shooting from outside, and I don't know that it's going to happen very often, but if they we've seen Painter run some big to big stuff with TKR and Edey, when that was there. And I can certainly envision situations where if Kluff's at the top of the key and kind of running that big to big pass down to TKR, if they leave him alone, you wouldn't shock me to put a few up. Now, I don't expect them to put up 2 or 3 a game, but like if they're just going to sag off of him completely, I think he might try to make them at least honor it from that spot.
And I put out a tweet about this. I care less if Kluff shoots 1 a game. I care less really about if they go in or not. I care about if he can make the defense care about him being out there. He could shoot 20% from 3. You assuming he's not just jacking them up, 20% from 3 on low volume. But if defenses respected him out there for whatever reason, I would take that over him shooting 45% on 1 attempt a game. Just because of right. It goes again back to kind of the Zach Edey thing where it's like teams are just, I assume they're going to do it to Kluff too, at least at first. They're just going to let him shoot. Like he is going to have to prove it for a bit before teams decide, all right, we will take our big out of the paint to actually put somebody out there. Or honestly, if that happens, they probably cross match and put the big on TKR and put the forward on Kluff, which then means Kluff can dominate the boards. If it can happen, that would be huge for the offense. I mean, that just makes it even that much more difficult for teams to guard this offense. I'm not banking on it happening, specifically the defense's respecting part. And if he's going to be left open, then obviously I'd rather him make him than not. But him if he can get to the point where he can move a defense with his jumper, that to me would be like just truly insane.
Yeah, and obviously, as I throw that out as a hypothetical situation, not something you expect to see a ton of even at all, because obviously he's brought in here to rebound, and if he's up on the top of the key, it's hard for him to rebound from that situation. So, but might be a little wrinkle that's seen there with some big to big stuff. Move on to Daniel Jacobson. Kind of the flip side here, there is a lot of film of DJ popping up threes and FIBA tournaments and in his high school and all that sort of thing. Again, just because that happened at those levels doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have Painter have Jacobson out there popping up threes, but seen it in some scrimmages, seen it in FIBA, those sort of things. Obviously, he comes in having only played 2 games from last year, getting injured, working his way back. I'm sure a lot of people listening watched that FIBA play. It looked early on like he was rusty, right? It looked like a guy who hadn't played in live competition for quite some time. But towards the end of the FIBA run specifically, I thought you saw him be a lot more impactful. If you listen to the coach, who's Arizona's head coach, right, is the one that did that?
Yep.
Yeah. He talked about the fact that he kind of turned a corner partway through that tournament as well and just started to really be much more impactful. A little bit different than Kluff as we talk about this. Not necessarily the sturdiest body, 7'4", 250 pounds. He did add 30 pounds on. Still doesn't look like a guy at his size, right, that's just stocky or really built necessarily, but he's added a little bit to his base, certainly from those regards. A guy that's going to affect shots up high, going to disrupt things, above the rim as a shot blocker. Maybe not necessarily going to be near as physical as Kluff in terms of battling for rebounds, in terms of getting position, but his size is going to allow him to do that. In his 2 games last year, 2-game sample size, 6.5 points and 3.5 rebounds in just 13 minutes of play. FIBA might be a little bit more indicative the last 2 years of what he might be able to do. In FIBA, averaged 6.6 points, 4.3 rebounds, 1.9 blocks on 60.6% field goal percentage. While there, we haven't got to see a ton of them, obviously. Saw him in exhibition, saw him in 2 live games, got to see him play in FIBA. Some of his best games weren't necessarily against the best teams in that FIBA deal, but FIBA is also kind of feels like an AAU open run sometimes, especially when you look at like the USA team compared to some of the others over there. What do you expect Daniel to excel at and bring to Purdue this year?
I think biggest thing is that's going to translate to shot blocking. Like he has good feel from what I've seen of knowing where he needs to be to protect the rim. He fits what Painter wants perfectly, and Kluff for the most part does too, in this sense of like being just a drop coverage big against pick and roll, meaning like going to play kind of below where the screen is, keep the ball handler in front. If they hit a bunch of mid range, it is what it is. But like Purdue last year was awful at protecting the rim. Like they were not good at it. With Jacobson especially, and then Kluff also, like that shouldn't be the case this year. They at least have 2 bodies now that can protect the rim, and Jacobson is the more prototypical, like, hey, I'm going to block a bunch of shots. He'll probably have a really high block rate in his, in whatever minutes he gets. Rebounding, I think, can be there. It kind of goes back to the physicality for me of like, if he can hold up physically, and he has put on weight, like you said, and even towards the end of last season, when he started like warming up a bit with the team and stuff again, you could see it's like, especially in his legs looked a lot stronger. So if he can hold up, then like he provides the rebounding that I said Kluff needs to bring. So that's the 2 check boxes there. And then offensively, he's definitely a bit different than Kluff. Like he is, I'm still like, I need to see him actually be a stretch 5 for me to like call him that. But like he has that upside where it's been talked about, like, hey, he can step out, he can shoot. I don't know if he doesn't feel like a guy that would get too many post ups. He might get a few more early in the season against some of like the not as big competition, just to maybe try to get him some reps there. But like, right, when he's in, he's definitely 4th, 5th option on the floor would be my guess offensively. I don't mean that in a negative way, just kind of where he's at and kind of how he fits in. Screening, I think, is, again, it'll be just kind of we'll wait and see. Like Just kind of need to see him have more reps working with Braden. Like, is he going to have the timing down? Is he going to be able to roll and seal? Like, with his size, if teams are going to switch a lot of stuff, or if they high hedge or whatever, like he's a guy that Braden can kind of just toss the ball to. And so it'll be interesting and fun to kind of see how those two work together as well.
Yeah, and last year we didn't play above the rim much, other than a couple of alley-oops to, Cam or to Miles here and there, but didn't really play above the rim very much after watching Zach throw it down for quite a few years in a row there. So it will be fun at least to have a 7'4" guy that you can flip up an alley-oop to. We'll talk a little bit more later on about how we see all these guys kind of fitting together and how we might see, Painter using them as a unit out there on the floor together. But I think that's obviously him in a dunker spot. We'll get there. We'll talk about it because I want you to have your thoughts on it before I share my thoughts on it. But moving on to Liam Murphy, the other transfer that comes in from North Florida, shooter. You can pretty much just say shooter here. A guy who shot 7.7 attempts from three per game last year on only 24 minutes a game. So when he was in there, he was jacking them up. Shot 42% from three on those attempts. One of the best field goal or 3-point field goal percentages in the country last year. Outside of that, not necessarily a huge rebounding impact, not necessarily a huge passing impact. I look at him and I see shooter, and that's kind of where I leave it. I'm going to let you roll with it though, Joe. What does he bring to the table?
He's a shooter. Like, he is a 3-point specialist. He played more of like a small ball 5 last year in North Florida. I don't ever see that happening at Purdue. I will say on the film that I watched, and it is, it can be deceiving, just camera angles and things like that. I thought he seemed a little bit bigger than 6'7", which is what he was listed at. I don't know what he's listed at by Purdue this year, off the top of my head, although I could find it probably pretty quickly. He did at least seem a little bit bigger than 6'7". And so like that's gotta be kind of, he's listed, I think 6'7" also by Purdue, but that's what he's gotta be kind of offensively. He's more of a,
he's listed at 6'8" on Purdue's official roster.
Okay. So that might be more of his true height, truthfully. Right. He can shoot off movement a bit. I don't really trust him handling the ball. He is an elite standstill shooter, like somebody that if he's in, you can kind of just pop him in the corner. They can probably run some different actions involve like 77 action, which is a double ball screen where he might like ghost the first screen and kind of pop out, things like that. Like that is what he is to me. And it kind of in the same vein as TKR, although on the opposite spectrum, maybe just has to like hold up enough defensively against some of these fours. I don't necessarily trust the foot speed and all that, but you get him in a team environment where he's going to have guys behind him to be able to help. He just has to be good enough defensively, and then offensively, like, I mean, I'm going to look up his specific stats. He put up like 8 threes a game, I think, in less than like 7.7 threes attempted per game in 24 minutes of play. Like, the dude is just going to get him up from 3.
Yeah, 100%. And this was a stretch in practice here where I think there's 55 seconds or so in a row of him just knocking down threes. I love his release. I love that it doesn't drop much. Watching him play, I watched 2 full games of him last year. He's not scared to jack it if he has a sliver, right? Like, he will get that thing up, and he will get that thing up quick. We also learned, for everybody listening, that Joe doesn't listen to my player intro since I said 7.7 attempts on 24 minutes a game, but that's okay, Joe.
Yeah, my bad.
It's all good. It's all good. But I'm really curious to see how this plays out, right? And I'm going to save it for kind of when we talk about the fit and how these guys are going to fit together out there and where we see minutes going and rotations going and all of that. But where Murphy ends up, and remember, he's still not playing in contact. He's able to do some drills on his own and do some slight work, but he's not out there scrimmaging or anything like that. So sometime this fall, he'll be cleared to come back. but he hasn't really got to run through at full speed with all the other guys, any of the actions or defensive assignments, those types of things. So that's going to play into it too, at least at the beginning of the year, in terms of how he gets worked into the rotation as well. Next guy here, and then we'll kind of wrap up with an injured player in Burgess, but Jack Benner, not a lot of stats to pull from, right? Because he was redshirted last year, but a guy that came in really known as a shooter in high school as well. Wins the state championship with Brownstown Central, finishes 11th in Indiana in all-time scoring, averaged 25.6 points, 7.3 rebounds, 5.2 assists, and 44% from three as a high school senior. To me, the two practices that I've seen, because I didn't get to see him even in practice last year because I think he was sick. I want to say maybe he had mono during the summer last year or something like that. But he's a much better ball handler than I thought he might be at his size, which I just didn't get to see a lot of high school film on him. He's a really good passer, really smart, intelligent player, and he's just tougher. Like I said, when I was talking about the practice that I got to see, he was getting in there and mixing it up down low. Now, 6'6", you're obviously here. We're talking about him earning minutes at the 4. And Painter said in that after practice interview, the first one and the second one, that like, yes, we're running him at the 4 some, we're running him at the 3 some. Some of it is because of necessity, because Murphy's hurt right now. But also, when you look at potential stretch 4s, when Purdue wants to add spacing, it's either going to be Benter or Murphy, right? Whether they're in there with TKR and TKR is moving back to the 5 again and they have that stretch 4 out there against certain matchups, or whether they're in there with Kluff, when TK is off the court, or Jacobson, it's got to be one of those two, because there is no other 4 option on this team really outside once you move past TK other than those two.
Yeah, and that's where honestly I see the easiest path for Benner probably getting some minutes is Benner is a very good shooter. He's similar to Fletcher Lawyer in the fact that, like, if you go back and watch high school Fletcher Lawyer film, like, Lawyer was a good on-ball creator. Like, he was a good pick and roll facilitator and operator. And I know that's not like what he does now, and I don't expect it to be fully what Benner does at all. But like, I do think there's some value of, like, Lawyer had those reps, Benner had those reps of, like, all right, now, yes, I'm not running pick and roll, but I'm running off of a handoff, or I am attacking a closeout, and I have enough guard skill to be able to kind of like get to my spot from there. And Benner kind of fits that mold. Obviously, he's a good shooter, a great shooter. He feels like he has the upside to maybe be that kind of utility wing that feels like Purdue hasn't had for at least a little bit. Like Heidi sort of was, but kind of that. I mean, that's the type of mold that I see him in more of, just this 3-4, can help stretch the floor, can maybe add some guard skills, like if in a pinch, especially when he's playing the 3. And then obviously I haven't seen anything with like the toughness and all that you're saying in practice, but like stuff like that is valuable if he is going to play the 4. Like, I don't know if I don't see many lineups with him at the 4 or Murphy at the 4 for that matter, with TKR at the 5, just because, I don't know. It could be, we'll talk about it in a sec. But like, he's going to be another guy that can just help space the floor. Like, I would not be shocked if he ends up just becoming the backup 4.
Yeah. And, I've gotten to go to 2 summer workouts, and that's it. Right. So I'm taking away impressions from 2 2-hour sessions. The one thing I will say is, we're around people who are around the program. And the one thing I've kind of heard a few times now is just like, Benner's going to surprise people. So now, there were different times when we heard Brian Waddell was going to surprise people, right? So like, it's got to come to fruition, right? It's got to happen. But certainly it sounds like he's looked good during the summer, and quite frankly, that he looked good practicing all year last year as a redshirt while he was doing that. Last player that we got to kind of highlight, and then we can talk about how they're going to fit together, how we might see him used, is Raleigh Burgess. Obviously, Raleigh got to play all year last year. Didn't really kind of get, he's kind of out of the rotation. Then he came into the rotation. wasn't necessarily in the best shape, especially early in the season. Took him a while to get there. Painter kind of famously joked at different times that he would get a good 4 minutes out of Raleigh, and then he'd have to sit him after that. Gets injured, has the same surgery that Daniel Jacobson had when he got injured. Theoretically, timeline-wise, if you look at it relative to Jacobson, obviously it's different in every situation, but theoretically could be ready to go at the beginning of the season in terms of being cleared, but then has to get back in shape, right? And when we think about where he came in last year and the fact that I don't know that you would ever really say that at any point in the season that he was as good a shape as what Painter and the coaching staff would have liked in terms of being able to have some stamina for longer than 4 or 5 minute stretches. But he's going to have to go through that whole process of getting back into game shape. Had some flashes, right? Shoots 40% from 3 last year. Sometimes took ones that he probably shouldn't have taken, but shot 40% from 3, showed some flashes there. Thought he got more fluid and just had a better understanding as the season went on, but only averaged 6.4 minutes per game and was kind of forced in there after Jacobson went down. 1.3 rebounds, 1.9 points with, where is it? 54% from the field on the year. I guess, what did you see from Burgess last year that might give you some hope going forward? And does he play this year, or does with the whole timeline of coming back, having to get back in shape again, everybody that's in front of him, is there a chance he maybe redshirts this year?
Yeah, I'll save that part for the end, and we'll kind of segue into the rotation from there. But if Burgess, his pathway is, he has upside as a guy that can play both the 4 or the 5. I think he's more naturally a 5, but like given the roster construction, there are a little bit of a spoiler. There's roughly 10 minutes, in my opinion, at the 4, and that's basically the only spot that's left open in all of the big man minutes right now. If he can get back healthy, if the conditioning can be there, like it wouldn't shock me to see him get some of those minutes. The shooting has to be there. 40%. He was 6 for 15. Obviously, a really small sample. Free throw shooting was poor, which is also a very small sample. But that's, free throw shooting oftentimes can indicate how good of a 3-point shooter they actually are. Both those small sample size, we'll see where that ends up. I thought the rebounding was good, and granted, a decent chunk of his minutes came more end of game type situations, but like still, I thought the rebounding numbers themselves were good in those minutes. Just he just needs to keep getting reps, conditioning. Game just has to slow down, I think, for him, or continue slowing down for him a bit. But to answer the second part of the question, like I wouldn't be shocked if he redshirts, just given like, right, I between the power forward, the 4 and the 5, right, there is 80 minutes total. TKR is going to play 30 roughly minutes. In some spots, he's going to play a few more, but we'll just say 30 to keep the numbers simple. I would expect Kluff to be, Kluff and Jacobson to more or less split the 40. So that leaves like 10 minutes. And that's, to me, between Murphy, Benner, and Burgess. Now, if Murphy doesn't quite pan out, maybe there is more of a pathway then for Burgess to get his minutes there, and he doesn't redshirt. But just given the injury, given the tougher pathway to minutes, like it wouldn't shock me if he does redshirt.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see it play out, and kind of just what they think the best situation and what Burgess thinks is the best situation, right? Because at the end of the day, that's a personal decision by the player. Coach can give advice about what they think they ought to do, but at the end of the day, the player's got to make that decision, right? So,
and I mean, obviously, he needs to do whatever is best for him, but you look at it purely from a financial standpoint, like redshirting is not a bad option in today's day and age. Not at all.
All right. So as we look at how Painter might use this lineup, how rotations might go, one of the questions that keeps coming up that I get asked is, I live in Lafayette, West Lafayette. I'm around this area all the time. So I run into people. I get asked all the time, is spacing going to be an issue? I have my thoughts, specifically given the fact that TKR likes to operate out of that short roll versus compared spacing issues that might have been there when Zach was here. Do you see a chance of there being spacing issues with this team? And how might Jacobson and Kluff work around TKR in terms of what type of sets they might run or how actions that they might use to provide advantages offensively for Purdue?
Yeah, so I assume we will try to have Matt Painter on again before the season, like we have the past few years. This is one of the questions I kind of already had lined up for him, was just how do you utilize the spacing, and how important is it that Braden and TKR can kind of just dominate that mid-range area? Because in my opinion, I don't think that there's going to be much of a spacing issue. Like, I think with how basketball has the evolution has gone, right? It went to a very 5-out small ball space, and it's kind of morphed. And this is more NBA, right? College, I think, is a little bit more widespread, just given how many teams there are. But especially like NBA, you're seeing more two bigs come back, and if there's complementary skill sets, you can make it work. And with TKR's skill set, like, he makes it very easy to fit alongside other bigs. And the difference now is, like, he is the number one, number two option, whatever you want to call, between him and Braden. Probably number one option offensively, in terms of scoring the ball. And when he was with Zach, he was like, what, the fourth or fifth option. So it makes it like he has to then try to fit his game into everything around him. Now it's, hey, we're going to fit everything around you. Expect Kluff to be and Jacobson to be in the dunker spot a lot. Which, just to point out really quick, is like kind of these types of areas right here. That's the dunker spot. Expect them to be there. The one other thing, and I also kind of want to ask Painter about this. There's been this new kind of Duke did it a lot. It's been Boston Celtics have done it. And it's actually putting your 5 in. This is called the slot right here. It's putting your 5-man here, because then what that does is it makes the big have to choose. Like, hey, especially if Kluff or Jacobson can become somewhat of a stretch 5, you kind of have to pick your spot. Whereas if they're tucked here, the big can kind of just help protect the rim there. There's a lot of options. There are a lot of options, I think, for figuring out spacing, and just given how good Braden and TKR are in the mid-range, like, and they're shooting everywhere else, right? CJ, Lawyer, we talked about Benner and Murphy, even Antoine West, like Meyer. I'm still a big Jakari believer. Like, I really think all of them can help space the floor elsewhere. So it's like TKR to me isn't going to occupy much of the same space as Kluff and Jacobson will. And you can still stretch defenses a little bit different that way.
And I'm 100% with you. And just the fact that TK loves to operate in that 8 to 12 foot range in terms of when he's catching the ball in the short roll. And then defenses got to make a choice, right? Like, are you sending help on TK? Who are you sending it from? If that low man tries to step up a little bit just to provide a little bit of help, then you've got to flip up to Daniel Jacobson potentially for an alley-oop or something to Kluff. And just like, I mean, Trey is so good at this little 8-foot push shot, right? And it's not that hard to transition from that little push shot. We saw it in practice where he just shoves that thing up, for an alley-oop to one of the bigs cutting down out of that dunker spot. I don't see it either in terms of being a major issue. And I think we got that year 2 jump coming from Jakari and CJ. I expect them. I mean, I thought CJ was great from 3 all year last year. And now you bring Jakari. The last 2 months of the season was really, really good. So now you've just got shooters all around. So, okay, maybe that low man doesn't step up. You send somebody to stun at TKR from a wing. All right, you're going to leave Jakari or CJ or Fletcher wide open for a 3. Like, it's got to be tough for teams just to look at Purdue this year offensively and think, okay, if we can't go 1-on-1, 1 through 5, like, how exactly are we going to try to defend this team?
And that's, I mean, somebody said it, TKR, Painter, somebody was like, we want to be the best offense in the country. Like, that is, Purdue, in my opinion, should be probably the number 1 offense in the country at the end of the season. Like, again, all due respect, I love Caleb First. Yeah. He had limitations offensively. Purdue last year, when TKR and Caleb First was on the floor, 125.1 offensive rating. That was in the 99th percentile in the country. They also shot 44.8% from 3 when those two were on the floor, which would have been the best mark in the entire country. Now you replace Caleb First, who is more mobile than First or Kluff or Jacobson, to be fair, but you replace first with Kluff or Jacobson, who I think both have more skill offensively, and you get Braden and TKR another second year of like really them running pick and rolls. You get these year 2 jumps. Lawyer's going to do his thing. Myers, like, I don't think it's a hard path at all to sell of like, hey, this offense is going to be insanely good and they're going to be fine with spacing.
All right. So as we talk about that kind of roll off that, I guess, is there anything more specifically that you could see this Purdue team doing differently now that you have Jacobson back, now that you have Kluff coming in, than what they might have done in offensive sets last year?
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot more of the horns high-low look, or just high-lows in general. I mean, when it was Edey and TKR, like I could draw it.
Let's go.
But I mean, it was I swear they ran it at least 5 times a game, and all that it was is horns high-low. So you had horns formation is there we go, something like this, where you have 2 guys elbow kind of extended, 2 corners, and then ball up top. All that would happen was one guy would screen, so then this would happen, and then there's going to be like this guy either goes down to seal, or what honestly would happen more is now this guy pops up, whoever set the screen rolls, seals their guy, so now you're kind of in a formation like this, where this is the 4, this is the 5. This was like Mason Gillis a lot of times, or TKR.
Mm-hmm.
Ball goes here. This guy is just sealing this area. I think with Kluff and TKR's passing abilities, it makes it very easy to kind of look. That one specifically, horns high-low, but they can get to a lot of high-low looks out of that stuff, just given both of their passing abilities. I think Jacobson, maybe it'll take a little bit more time for that to really come through. But also with Jacobson, you could see him try to stretch the floor a little bit more and let TKR really just operate in that 10-foot area. You saw, Purdue last year at times really just basically clear out a side of the court and give it to TKR at 12 feet and say, hey, go to work. I expect to see a lot more of that still. So there's definitely different things like that we've seen in the past, but I expect to see like a reemergence of.
Gotcha. As we move on to kind of rotations, minute expectations, starting lineup. We'll get to minutes and starting lineup here in a second, but TK played, I think, 30.8 minutes per game last year. We heard Painter say when he was talking about rotations in a post-game press conference last year, like, there is a point where productivity goes down, right? For Braden, that's apparently like 45 minutes, and he can play a full game, right? But he was saying with Fletcher, it's maybe around 32 minutes. With TK, it's maybe around 30 minutes, something like that, where you don't want to stretch it too far, right? Because it's law of diminishing returns at some point. If we assume TK is going to play 30 minutes, that means we have one of the 2 4s, which we're assuming we're picking from Murphy and we're picking from Benter. Is there anything there in regards to whether that one of those 2 guys is playing with Kluff or playing with Jacobson that you think is a better fit?
That's a good question. I think this is nitpicking. My general answer is no, but if I'm going to nitpick, I could see Benner working a little bit better with Jacobson, maybe just given Benner's like ability to have some guard skills. And right, when Kluff's in at center, he is still somebody I view right now as like he can just be sort of a hub offensively, working in the post, screen and roll, things like that, and a little bit higher usage rate, where I don't see that at least right away with Jacobson, where Benner can maybe work a little bit better in that aspect. But I do think for the most part, it feels a little bit plug and play. Who just pops better and who's making more threes. Who's making more threes might simply be the answer of who plays more. It probably will be.
Yeah, and I guess for me it was more flipped in terms of with those 2 guys on the court. Does one of either Jacobson or Kluff operate better in that big spot in terms of what Purdue would need when they have that small ball 4 out there?
Kluff to me. I think that's Kluff to me. Okay. He can post up more. I think he can be. I think it's a lot easier for Kluff to be a second option than Jacobson right now.
Gotcha. I could see that. Agree. It's always interesting to me as we look at starting lineups and then those staggered rotations, right? Painter's not running hockey wave substitutions out there like, who was the coach at Florida State? I can't think of his name right now.
I know who you're talking about, but
yeah. But there are some teams that will run 10, 11 deep. Saw it with some of the SEC teams last year that we played against, where
Michigan
it would
State.
seem like they had, the big waves of substitutions, right? Painter tends to stagger it more, where you might get two guys come in at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, and then a little bit later you get two more guys come in, and then it's staggered all the way through. So how that operates to me and where total minutes are, in my opinion, is the more interesting conversation than necessarily who starts, because we've seen time and time again where a guy who doesn't start, Mason Gillis, right, over TKR, actually plays more minutes than they do, or they essentially play the same minutes. I think that conversation is going to be way more interesting when we get to the guard room in regards to that, in terms of how the rotation is staggered. But as we look at this from a minute expectation, right, I think you and I are both on the same page. TKR somewhere around 30 to 32 minutes, right?
Yep.
Okay.
For me, majority of them coming at the 4.
Right. I would agree too. I could see certain matchups where Painter decides to throw out Murphy or Benner at the 4 and TK moves down to the 5, but probably not enough to even make a statistical difference on the entire season in terms of where the average are.
Random spots for like, oh, hey, we kind of just need to close with a small lineup is my thought.
Yep. So on the Kluff Jacobson then at the 5, we'll start there first, I guess. How do you see that playing out right now with not having seen Kluff play with the team at all, and only having seen Jacobson play with the team 2 minutes? I guess if you were just going to spitball a number right now, and don't hold us to any of this, all right, at all, but throw one out there, where would you see the minute split at the 5 kind of leaning towards?
I think Kluff 25 minutes, Jacobson 15 feels about right to me. I don't see either of them playing more than 25 either way. I would have just assumed Kluff to me feels like the higher floor right now, of like, you just know what you're going to get. Like, he's going to be solid. He's going to rebound. He's going to protect the rim in his way, which is a lot more of just being vertical. And has some of the offensive skills that can pair as well too. Jacobson probably has the higher ceiling, where it's like, I mean, if Jacobson can reach the ceiling somehow this season or close to it, or whatever his ceiling is for this year specifically, like, that's probably a better player than Kluff. And then maybe the minutes get flipped, but it's a little bit more of a question mark of how is he going to look? Is he going to be able to withstand Big Ten play? Like we expect it, especially now that he's had a year to kind of put on weight and stuff. But just with the questions, there seems to be more questions to me around Jacobson. So I would lean like 25-15 for Kluff to Jacobson.
Okay. And we did not discuss this before this. I don't think I've talked to Joe other than a text message to say, hey, when are we going to do a show? Specifically about Purdue in probably 3 or 4 weeks, because I've been too busy trying to move. But I put down 24 and 16, right? So we were pretty close on that, just a minute difference. I do think a lot of it is just going to be for maybe those people listening who really firmly believe that Jacobson's going to eventually take the starter spot or anything like that. I think it's just going to take him time to find his rhythm and get enough minutes in game flow where he gets extremely comfortable out there. I think he's going to make an impact right away, but just feel like Kluff is the more ready, like you said, plug and play for a team that wants to contend for a national championship right now. Doesn't mean I don't think might be some games, and will definitely be some games where Jacobson closes the game because they feel like they need that rim protector down low. All right, so that leaves us with minutes at the backup 4. Now, in this conversation, I'm going to say for Jack Benner, we're only talking about his minutes at the 4, not potential minutes at the 3. So specifically at the 4 spot, Liam Murphy, Jack Benner, average minutes per game. I also want to note to everybody listening, if anybody's at home, keeping a scorecard of this show and next show, and then does the total of minutes and yells at us that we went over the exceeded minutes, that 5 guys can be played between the 5 positions in a game. The way stats are tracked, the minutes per game is per game of minutes, or minutes per game that they played in. So the total at the end of the season, if you look up a team stats, will actually be over the total 200 minutes that are available in any specific game. But anyway, I digress. Joe, Liam Murphy, Jack Benner, where do you see specifically Benner at the 4 minutes, Liam Murphy minutes ending up?
My truthful gut instinct is by the end of the season, it's Benner gets 10. And I think Murphy gets cut from the lineup, or not cut from, he dropped from the rotation. That's what I meant to say. That's not me. There's obviously Murphy has pathways to get all those 10 minutes. Truthfully, like if he is just lights out like he can be, it is probably gonna be hard to not play him at some point. But I think by the end of the season, I would bet Benner gets probably 10, or it might be like 8 and 2 is what I'll say, because Murphy will get some games where he plays a few, some where he doesn't. But to start the season, I would see it probably being more honestly flipped of like Murphy 7, Benner 3. But I think that's going to slowly flip over the course of the season.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really interesting because, I mean, Benner at 6'6", does he have the size to match up against some of the other 4s that are out there? Defensively, I guess, can he match up and can he hold up in those minutes that he's there? In the backup minutes that he's going to be playing, how many minutes is he going to be playing against like elite 4s with true size as well? Maybe at the same time, Murphy's got to work his way back off the shoulder injury. So while you said more at the beginning of the season, I could actually see it leaning Benner early while they try to work Murphy in at the beginning of the season. And like once Murphy's up to full speed and feeling really comfortable, kind of a period there where Painter's just trying to figure it out between those two and who's going to earn those minutes. So we know Painter likes to cut it down to, around a 9-man rotation by January or so, it feels like. And as we get into March, it feels like a lot of time it goes to kind of more of an 8-man rotation. So it's hard to see a path where both of those guys are getting, consistent minutes at the very end of the season. And to me, it's just going to be a matter of production. Like, where does it play out? And then also, by all means, let's pray to God nobody gets injured. But an injury anywhere along the way can flip all of this as well. All right. So I think you've tipped your hand a little bit here. But in terms of starting lineup, starting at the 4, starting at the 5, who do you have?
So one of us froze. It might have been me. It might have been you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. TKR's at the 4, Kluff at the 5. I do think the front court's really to me, the only question. There's 2 questions. It's how many minutes does Kluff and Jacobson actually split? And then who gets the backup 4 minutes? Those are, it feels a lot more straightforward than when we do the guard room. We could talk about it for 35 minutes of like, well, this and that. Yeah. So.
Yep, 100%. I'm with you. All right. To finish up, I got 5 buy-sell questions for you, and then we'll look at a couple highlighted comments, and then I got to throw some nicer clothes on and get to Boiler House Prime to eat dinner tonight. So, all right. So, my buy-sell. Buy or sell, Trey Kaufman-Renn is a consensus All-American this year.
Buy. And I will say, we had a Kraig put together kind of a show script, kind of how we wanted to flow through it. I saw that there was this buy sell thing, didn't really read it, just so I could give my live reaction here. So buy. Okay.
I'm with you 100%. Actually think there was enough backlash and offseason talk of like, hey, you guys kind of messed up here. Like Trey probably should have been mentioned on some more All-American teams last year and didn't. And then combined with where I think his production is going to be, I've got another buy sell here that I think adds to his value this year that I think is going to go well. Anyway, all right, got to cut off. I don't want to lean your hand one way or another. Second one, Oscar Kluff leads the Big Ten in rebounding.
Sell. Minutes. Plus, just there are some really good rebounders in the Big Ten. I
What
think
if-
he'll be
what if
one
I-
of the leaders, but the leader Sell.
What if I said per 40 minutes?
Probably still Sell.
Okay. Yeah. That was my thought too, just from a minute standpoint, because Jacobson's going to eat into his minutes enough that I would agree. Although how many minutes did Kluff did not play as many minutes per game last year as I thought he did. Now, obviously, he was playing in a weaker conference, right? But
Only
still,
27
I
a
was,
game.
Yeah, 27 a game. I was a little bit surprised he put up the rebounding numbers that he did on just 27 minutes a game. All right. Third one. Daniel Jacobson averages 2+ blocks per game.
2+ blocks per game. Oh man, that's a really good line. I'll buy. I think I'll buy because then that leads to like there's real upside where he just is a 20 to 25 minute per game guy by the end of the season. Like that's within the realm of possibilities, and like if that's happening, he's probably averaging like 2.4 blocks a game or something crazy like that. I'm more confident in buying he'll have like a top 2 block rate in the Big Ten.
Matt Harms' freshman year played 17 minutes a game. How many blocks per game do you think he had? Without looking at the document.
Yeah, 1.5 would be 1.4 would have been my guess.
2.1.
Oh wow.
So when I said it at 2, I thought that was high because I was going to figure, his number around 15 to 16 minutes a game, obviously, as we talked about. But then I saw Harms' number and I'm like, well, he could impact it just as much as Harms as a freshman in around the same amount of minutes. So like I think it's doable. Certainly don't know if he gets there. Fourth one, TKR averages 4+ assists per game.
Sell 2.2 last year. I know I could see him getting into the 3s for sure. I don't. The dude's a bucket. Like the dude's just going to score the ball. Like, I just don't. I don't see it quite getting to that level, especially given Brain's a good passer and all that. But I would expect a little bit of an increase this season from the 2.2 last year.
So one of the reasons that I think that consensus All-American number probability has an even better chance is I just think with those two guys finishing versus, again, no offense to First, thought he was incredible defensively in terms of his versatility. I feel like I don't know why we keep saying this, but because we did, right? We thought he was a unicorn defensively in some ways in terms of what he could do, but wasn't the greatest finisher around the rim. No. I just think with the opportunity to kind of, flip it up to Jacobson or little bounce pass to Kluff, like he threw quite a few to First last year that just didn't get finished. I think that number is going to rise, man. I think there's a chance he gets to 4. I don't know if he does, but if he gets to 20 points, 4 assists a game, I think that makes the sell for All-American even better. Last one, Kluff and Jacobson help anchor a top 30 defense for Purdue.
Top 30.
Yeah, that line.
I'm gonna go buy because I buy Purdue winning a national championship, and I think in order to do that, they probably have to have a top 25-ish defense. Because they were 51 last year off the top of my head, if I'm correct. I believe they were 7 offensively, 51 defense, and like 16 overall or something. 7 offense, 53 defense, and 15 overall. My bad. I'll buy it just because, their rebounding wasn't great. It wasn't the worst thing ever, and it did improve throughout the season. But they couldn't guard the interior at all. Right? They had to go to kind of the no middle, really force threes. Now you at least get 2 bodies, of varying skill levels of being able to just simply be like, hey, we're going to funnel guys to you. You get back more to like Purdue's just going to make teams shoot a lot of mid ranges. Some games that's going to burn them. It'll happen. But when that happens, Craig, remind me to say like the alternative to that would have been to teams burning them from the mid range is what happened last year of teams just burning them at the rim.
Right.
At some point, you got to give up something. but I'll buy. I
100,
don't know if I said that. I'll buy.
100%. Okay. So we got 3 buys and 2 sells. After I mentioned Harm's number, maybe leaning more buy for Jacobson on the block. Yeah,
it was borderline anyways, for sure.
Gotcha. All right, let's get to some starred comments. We do thank you guys, 354 people viewing. Appreciate everybody tuning in today. I know people are extremely excited about Purdue basketball. Don't know when we'll get to the guard room. I've got 2 more weeks before I have to be completely moved out. But we will get to the guard room here eventually. Matthew Keller says, I don't see this team losing. If they lose in the big, who? Reactions, Joe.
War of attrition of like 20 games in the Big Ten. They're going to lose 3 games, I would bet, in the Big Ten. Who to? I don't know. Michigan is somebody off the top of my head that can pose some problems. I'm still a little bit away from getting all my like preseason rankings and going through all the film and all that done. So I don't have like 100% specific teams like ready to go. But they have the West Coast trip, right? That can be a game drops. Like it's going to pop up somewhere. I would say 2 to 3 losses feels more realistic.
Yeah, it's just so hard, man. It's so hard to be good every single game, for everybody to be on every single game, especially like you said, and a lot of times it's not the trip out west. It's when you get back and you play a game, 36 hours later coming off of that trip. Derek Mulliken with a $1.99 super chat. Appreciate you guys and all you do. Boiler up. Thank you very much, Derek. Tim Krim says, do you see Liam playing on the wing and giving Fletch a spell?
I don't see Murphy and Fletch overlapping really at all in terms of minutes distribution. I think Murphy to me is pretty strictly a 4. I don't see a lineup where they do Murphy, TKR, and insert big.
Yep. I'm with you there. I think if there is overlap, just like you said, it's Benter. I also, with you, think Benter's greatest path is as a stretch 4 this year, just because you have Meyer, you have Jakara, you have CJ. Only one of those 3 guys is going to start. Little teaser for when we do get to the guard room. Joe and I haven't talked about this, but there's quite a bit of difference in speculation about who that 3rd starter is going to be. Obviously, we know Fletch and Braden are going to start, but I think there's really good arguments about who that 3rd starter is all the way around. And we haven't even got to see Meyer step on the court yet, really, with other Purdue players. So lots to talk about when we get to that, but that'll be coming up soon. Derek Mulliken, Benter may be the best high school player I've ever watched in person. Dude has it all. Very smart, great player. Like I said, I got to see him for the first time this summer in action, obviously just in drills and a little bit of scrimmage. But did you ever see him play in high school, Joe?
I watched 3 of his games on film. Never saw him in person though.
Gotcha. Who's the greatest high school player you ever saw?
In person or
in
film
person?
Oh.
In person.
Because film of was Braden, and I still remember watching Braden's film before his freshman year and being like, yeah, this dude is starting. Who's the greatest person? I saw Etwan in person. I've seen Etwan and Robbie in person in high school. Off the top of my head, it's probably those 2. Chase Adams, he's a pull, but I don't know if he went lower D1. He was my grade. Yeah, probably one of those 3.
Okay. Mine's not really close. It was Sean Kemp by a long way.
That's fair. That's fair.
Now, I got to see Woody and Chad Austin, and my dad was an administrator at Richmond High School, so Beast from the East back when Richmond was actually good at basketball. Got to see a lot of those guys who then funneled to Purdue and some who went out to some other schools, but saw Sean Kemp in the finals or Final 4 of Indiana State High School Basketball Championship. And dude was a dude, just a dude. So
that's fair.
All right. I'll let you take it home, Joe.
Yeah. So appreciate everybody tuning in. If you made it this far and you aren't already subscribed, please do so. Just helps us out, hitting like. We appreciate everybody kind of tuning into the comments. As Kraig said, not 100% sure when the next one will be, but it'll definitely be sometime within, sometime sooner rather than later, and start getting a couple more up there, and start getting back into the swing of things. Because yeah, we are, I think, what did I say, 84 days away from November 3rd, 85 days away from Purdue's first regular season basketball game. I don't even know. We're probably like 70 days away from their first exhibition then. So it's here. It's basketball season's almost here. Good time of year. Very excited for it. And yeah, appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will see you all whenever the next show is.